Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. I can give you a sneak peek there, the brother you're going to see. Welcome to Night School. Every single night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where I break down the most interesting conversations, the most intense debates, the most urgent conversations happening in our world. But we don't do it with superficial talking points. We don't do no cable news drive-by analysis. No, we have a global classroom here where we have deep dive breakdowns of all the issues, all the tensions, all the history, all the analysis necessary to not just understand the world, but to leave it better than you found it. And that's what we do every single night here. And tonight, we have a very, very, very important conversation that we absolutely have to have. Of course, it's about the 2024 election. Right now, with less than 100 days from Election Day, in fact, I think we're on day 97 now, 97 countdown, that's to say, we have Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic Party's ticket, and she has raised record money in the last week and a half. She's raised over $200 million. 66% of that $200 million is coming from first-time contributors, and they were made after Joe Biden stepped out of the race. What does that mean? It means that there's a whole new crop of people who are willing to fund and support and endorse Kamala Harris. What it means is that there are a lot of people out there who are not enthused by the Biden campaign, but they are enthused by the possibilities and promises of the Harris campaign. And those groups include not just individuals, but also labor groups, also progressive groups, also some maybe even radical groups. And one of those groups is the Working Families Party. You know the Working Families Party. They are a righteous group. They are a principled group. They are an organized group, and they do everything they can to fight for economic and social justice in this country. And they recently gave an endorsement to Vice President and presidential candidate Kamala Harris. And so right now we're joined by the national director of the Working Families Party. We know him. We love him. He is our brother, Maurice Mitchell. My dear brother, welcome to Night School.
It's good to be here, brother. I'm so happy to be in class with you.
You the guest lecturer, brother. Help me understand, first of all, what the Working Family Party's decision was, what the process was in arriving at an endorsement for Vice President Kamala Harris in a presidential role.
Absolutely. And let me just take a few steps back, because I don't want to assume that everybody in your audience knows what the Working Families Party is. So the Working Families Party is a national political movement and a national third party that, and to put it in one sentence, we believe in the crazy idea that in a democracy, the people should govern, the people should lead, not corporations and not the wealthy. And we make endorsements, we render endorsements, like close to 1,000 endorsements every election cycle. And our bread and butter are local elections, local endorsements. We believe that over time, you want to surface people like educators, like union members, like activists, like organizers, give them the support, surround them with labor organizations and grassroots organizations that will roll with them, help them to get elected. And then once they're elected, help them to govern on the municipal level, on the legislative level. And then every 4 years, we render an endorsement on the presidential level. Because we believe that on every single level, that working people should have a say, and that vacuums are filled ultimately. So if we choose not to be in the electoral arena, that's just more space for organized capital and for people who don't believe in the vitality and the need for our people to thrive, to be able to make calls politically. So specifically, as it relates to the 2024 election, right? We've been in conversation for months and months and months, right? Chapter by chapter by chapter. The Working Families Party is, we have chapters in more than a dozen states. We're building in close to 20 states, and we have activists all across the country. And we've been talking when it looked like it was Joe Biden and Trump at the top of the ticket. We've been talking about all the issues, the local issues that we care deeply about, what it would mean, the contrast between MAGA or the Democratic Party as it relates to climate change, as it relates to foreign policy, as it relates to labor issues, And we understood that in this binary choice, we wanted to be clear about where we stood. And so state chapter by state chapter, those debates took place. Eventually, we came together in Philadelphia in person. So delegates from all of our state chapters, as well as our national members, because we have national member organizations, labor institutions, and movement organizations that struggled around these questions. And then we took a vote. And we also had a vote of our membership, 250,000 members. And the vote was close to unanimous, 95%. That's higher than our positive vote for Bernie, higher than our vote for Biden, higher than our vote for Elizabeth Warren. It is one of the most clear votes. So our base was clear. And I think what our base was saying, that in this moment, when Joe Biden dropped out and Kamala Harris came in, we see an opening. Now, we have no illusions about who and what the Democratic Party is, about what it means to vote for a presidential candidate, about who and what America is. We have no illusions about that. And we believe that this choice really matters in the lives of everyday working people. And it's our job to organize all of our folks that have real questions, that are skeptical about the political process, that don't like the Democrat or Republican Party, that are deeply, deeply disturbed about the war in Gaza and everything that's taking place overseas, not just in Gaza, but the United States empire's role in instability all across the world, that there's a role that we could play and that the presidential choice actually matters. And that's what our endorsement of Kamala Harris meant.
So talk to me about a little bit about the process, but also the comparison. It sounds like, if I understand you correctly, had Biden stayed in the race, you all would have endorsed Biden ultimately as well.
So had Biden stayed in the race, it is likely that we would have been wrestling with the structural conditions don't change. So we would have still been wrestling with the structural reality of this binary choice and the need for us to join as a independent faction in a broad united front against fascism. I can't say what would have happened because a democratic process would have happened in reality that we're not
fair
in.
enough. I don't want to do the counterfactual. Did you endorse him 4 years ago?
We actually endorsed Elizabeth Warren, and when she dropped out, Bernie Sanders, and when he dropped out, Biden. Right. Okay. So
that gives me some insight into what you would have done.
Yes, right. But what we do is we attempt to wrestle with the structural conditions, right, which aren't really about the candidates. And what we understand is, and I think, look, I thank God for the Heritage Foundation and their desire to write Project 2025. Yes. And then their further desire to make a PDF out of it. And then the further desire to put it on a website and make it downloadable for all of us, because that actually, and then thank God for Taraji P. Henson for shouting it out at the BET Awards, right?
I just want to point out that we're 11 minutes into an interview and a Howard person has referenced a Howard person. That's the longest it's ever taken.
It was coming one way or another, right? So because that has helped us have a popular conversation of what we believe at the Working Families Party is what politics are for. Politics are not about the old guy versus the crazy guy, or the black lady versus the racist guy, which is mainly, if you watch MSNBC or CNN, it's mainly the discourse about what politics are for and what the presidential choice is. What we understand is that these campaigns do involve individual people, but their campaigns are political vehicles. So the Kamala Harris campaign is a political vehicle. That individual, Kamala Harris, if she ends up in the White House, she'll be surrounded by hundreds of people. And day one, those people will be guided by an agenda. The same is true for Donald Trump. For MAGA, their candidate is Donald Trump. His campaign is the vehicle. Their agenda is Project 2025. And because that's true, we believe that the contrast couldn't be clearer for working people. On the flip side, with Kamala Harris, right, the agenda is mixed because the Democratic Party is at least partially corporately captured. And so when she gets in the room,
partially, brother.
Well, I didn't say what part, right?
Right.
Okay, right.
99%. Right.
I mean, but it still also is the party of, Bernie and AOC and Rashida and whoever else, right? And labor unions, but it also is the party of organized capital. And so when she gets in the room, there's at least a debate, right? In the Biden White House, there is an actual debate in Gaza taking place. In a Trump White House, there is a consolidation, a consolidated corporate view, a consolidated white Christian nationalist view. We believe that that distinction really matters, right? And we also have long-term aspirations so that we're not forced in these really troubling, really sort of emotionally hard to stomach binary choices every 4 years.
So that's where I want to go with this. My gentle critique would be maybe that you're overstating the amount of space inside the Democratic Party to have some of those debates. I'm not sure there is a debate on Gaza. I mean, I've spoken to people inside of the Biden White House and inside the State Department, and there are some dissidents who left. But in general, I ain't seen a Democratic president or a Republican president that's had a principled or responsible or even remotely humane posture on the issue of Israel-Palestine in modern American history. So I'm not sure that's there. I agree that I don't want to pretend that they're opposite sides of the exact same coin. I do think that Trump is a different animal. And I do think that the MAGA movement is a different sort. And so I don't want to pretend that, they're like some people do and say, they're all the same and it doesn't really matter. It matters. It absolutely matters. My pushback, though, is that if you all say, look, we have a binary system where we're responding to the realities of the system, it means every 4 years you're going to ultimately endorse a Democrat. I mean, I don't imagine a circumstance where you're going to endorse a Republican, and at least under the modern political formation, because the Republican Party option is probably always going to be substantively worse. And if we want to get to a political future where we're not trapped between these two terrible options, how do we get then don't we have to do something different? How do we get out of that mix?
That's why we're building our own party. So I would agree that if all we did was say, well, look, it's clear that the Republicans are a white Christian nationalist party. And in this rigid two-party system, we basically have to glob onto the Democrats, even though they're insufficient. And that should just be what we do. That, I think, is problematic. It's an insufficient response. And it's only doing half of what we think we need to do, right? We believe in block and build. We believe that it's our duty to block the far right, but we have to build the alternatives. So we actually have a plan for a multiracial, multi-party democracy in this country, right? So if you look to France is a multi-party parliamentary democracy. That's one of the ways that the French left was able to engage in a very principled, strategic, disciplined strategy and actually make some political sacrifice, basically align with the French center in order to defeat the French far right, right? It's harder to do that under our very rigid two-party system. That is essentially what we're doing, given the confines of the two-party system, by building the Working Families Party. And if you'd indulge me, I'll just share a little bit about how we're doing that.
Yeah.
So our country, elections don't happen nationally. We live in a federalized country, so elections happen state by state by state, even county by county. You could even say polling place by polling place. And we believe that a third-party approach that every 4 years sort of wakes up to the fact that politics matter and then elevates a charismatic leader to run at the top of the ticket in order to somehow almost maybe magically build a third party.
I know some parties like that.
Yeah. And look, like, we don't believe that strategy is a winning strategy. Look, Ross Perot was a billionaire and he wasn't able to make a serious dent, right? He got 18%, I think. Being a billionaire, being able to self-fund and being able to spend as much money as he wanted to, like, be on TV, he couldn't break through. We're choosing a grassroots, state by state, county by county, city by city, third-party approach. It's the work of a generation, but we believe we could break through. We think as soon as a decade, we could actually contend on a serious level for federal power. But it's going to require real sacrifice, clear-eyed organizing, but we already have proof points. So, Mark, I know you're a Philly resident, and Philadelphia is a two-party city, the Democrats and the Working Families Party, right? And so Philly is maybe an outlier because it has the minority party set-asides that, right. And we won't get into the complexities of Philly election law, but what that means is that there are Working Families Party only people. They're not Democrats, they're not Republicans, who are at-large city council members, people like Kendra Brooks and Nicholas O'Rourke. And what's to
and
me,
many more are running. We're seeing a groundswell of people trying to get those jobs.
Yes, absolutely. And what's important to me about that story is they're not just sitting on city council being gadfly lefties, like, and having their colleagues ignore them all the time. They're actually governing and they're delivering for working people. You know, they're $14 million in affordable housing, 70 affordable housing units that Nick and Kendra have delivered. There's this program called Built to Last in Philly. It's a home repair program that's $5 million. Like, these are like concrete, securing concrete material victories for working people that otherwise wouldn't happen on the municipal level. This is like the local level. And these are working class Black folks who are not career politicians, who are like, Kendra is from born and raised in North Philly, and highly, highly accountable to the grassroots. That's the type of grassroots, bottom up sort of third party approach that we're doing, that we're building, that we've proved in Philadelphia, that we're proving in New York, that we're expanding and growing in close to 20 places and beyond. And it's not going to happen overnight. You know, Cabral says, claim no easy victories, tell no lies. I wish I could tell you that between now and November, that we could build a third party that could take on the two parties. It's not going to happen in an election cycle, but it can happen if we're really clear-eyed about it. And we do the organizing. We actually do the organizing county by county, state by state. And that's what we're doing at the Working Families Party.
When you think, let me ask you a question. When you think about that 10-year vision, and let's say it takes 20 or 30 or 5, whatever.
Sure.
Ultimately, given the constraints of our electoral structures, are you imagining that you would overtake the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, and i.e., it's now working families versus Democrats like it is in Philly, or that it's working class versus Republican? And if either of those options are the answer, sort of what does that mean politically?
Sure. So there's a number of different permutations. I wish I could foresee the future, but what we're doing, right? What we're doing is, in many ways, sometimes we operate like a faction of the Democratic Party by using the Democratic Party primary as a main site of struggle. And then we're also building, as we do that, though, we're always building our own independent infrastructure, and we're operating as an independent vehicle.
I need you to explain that to my audience. We're in night school now. I was break down to these. I got some brilliant people here who just aren't familiar with the politics. When you say use the Democratic primary as a site of struggle, does that mean that these people are, these working families candidates are registered as Democrats, but make it very clear that there's something else, and then they try to defeat the Democrats in the primary?
Let me just make it plain. Like, we cook what we have in the kitchen. So like in Philly, there's that law that allows us to be the minority party, and we could overtake the Republicans. So we do that in Philly. In New York, we have this thing called fusion voting. So we actually have ballot access in New York and Connecticut and in Oregon, right? And then in other places, and also in those places, if there's an open seat, meaning we don't know who the Democrat is going to be, or if there's a corporate Democrat that needs to get taken down and needs to be primaried from the grassroots, basically that we need a challenger, somebody who actually represents the interest of working people, because that Democrat has sold out by the police unions or the real estate lobby, and they're only interested in having conversations with them. We try to take them out with somebody from the grassroots. And that's what a primary is. That's the primary is the election before the general election. So we often go to battle in these primaries, and it's an opportunity for us to have a conversation about the world that we want. And in this rigid two-party system, it's almost like the Republicans have given up on seriously governing. So they're just kind of living in this conspiratorial Trump cultist right Christian nationalist reality. So most of the policy debates about serious public policy are happening inside the Democratic Party. And you have some folks arguing the corporate position and the neoliberal position, and some people arguing the grassroots or the labor position or the democratic socialist position or whatever. That's all happening. All of that debate on public policy is mainly just happening inside of the Democratic Party. So we enter inside of that conversation through the primary, and we recruit working families Democrats inside of the primary. And so that's one other way that we're able to meaningfully engage in politics as it is today. And we're also interested in transforming politics, because you're right, bro. Like, if we don't do anything to transform the system, then every year we're going to be stuck with the same binary choices. And so one of the policies, I just mentioned it, that we're trying to expand into more states is fusion voting. We believe that fusion voting is a meaningful reform that allows.
Break down what that means fully
Okay.
from our audience.
Sure. So fusion voting, it was the law of the land way back, and it allowed for parties to cross endorse the candidates of other parties. Right? Why is that meaningful? Well, this particular electoral system that we have, which is a first past the post, meaning whoever gets to 50% plus one first, winner takes all, meaning even if you have a plurality, like even if you like you're the highest vote getter, but there's a lot of other people in the election, so you're not necessarily the majority vote getter, you get the whole prize, right?
Winner take all.
Yeah, winner take all. Two-party system, which is like there's only two choices. That is probably one of the most undemocratic voter systems. So it's funny because you hear the United States critique the election in Venezuela and critique the election. You know what's ironic? When the United States attempts to export democracy, why is it that the United States never exports this system? Because it's so rotten.
It sucks.
It sucks. It's so anti-democratic. But this winner takes all, first past the post, two-party system, it creates the spoiler dilemma. The spoiler dilemma is real. It's not a myth. It's arithmetic. It's real. Like, so what it means is, like, if you as a third party run against one of the two parties, the party that is closest to you ideologically, you're going to siphon votes from them. And the outcome will be that in a competitive election, you will advantage the party that is the least like you ideologically, right? And so when people are talking about, like, there's people are still debating, whether or not Ralph Nader, if he wasn't in the election in 2000,
Because the union got to go to 24 years ago to Nader. I can tell you every day based on my Twitter mentions, which are in shambles constantly, whenever Republicans do something to piss people off, the first thing they tell me is it's my fault because I endorsed Jill Stein as a Green Party member. And because I live in Pennsylvania, people like Hillary lost by, say, 50,000 votes, and there were 51,000 Green Party votes. Therefore, you're as if Hillary was playing B for everybody. It's very frustrating.
I find that to be frustrating because somehow it's not giving the ultimate responsibility to the candidate that's at the top of the ticket.
There's a reason they didn't vote for you, right?
Did Hillary's campaign have anything to do with that? Right? It's like, it's baffling. I mean, that's another thing that I find, I might be digressing, but
no, you're going somewhere interesting. I want to ask you one more question though about Working Families Agenda. Because even the name Working Families. There's been a hell of a week around childlessness and families and family values coming from one J.D. Vance. When you all use the language of families, can you explain what you mean and what you don't mean?
Absolutely. Let me break everything down. When we say working, what do we mean? We mean everybody that has to hustle, has to work in order to get by today, in order to get by in their lives. Those are people that are employed in the traditional economy. Those are people that are doing work outside of the traditional marketplace and traditional economy. But if you're somebody that basically doesn't get money from capital gains and you have to figure out how to make ends meet, you're part of that working, right? And then the family for us is expansive. Family is both the people that we're related to by blood and also our chosen family. Family is, as you know, family is like as true as the connection between me and my 8-year-old and the connection between many of my comrades in arms that I've been fighting on the front lines of Black justice for generations, for decades, right? Those are my family. Those are my chosen family. That's my movement family. All of those things are family. And as we know, some people, because of our identities, have been excluded from our biological families. And so we have to recreate family elsewhere. That also is family. And so
interesting. So because I always wondered, like, why don't they call it the Working People's Party?
Well, I can tell you this. There's a reason why, if you listen to the language of a lot of politicians, especially Democrats, there's a reason why they always use that phrase, working families, right? And so so many people see themselves in that, and so many people understand the complexities in that, right? And we are a party that is committed to the interest of everybody that hustles and everybody that is attempting to build both, to protect both the family that they were raised in, as well as the families that they create. And so that's for us why we use that term, right? And there's language is complex and nuanced, and the English language, the language that we did not choose to speak, but we have been that has been hoisted upon us as African people in this continent, has some limitations and has some interesting quirks to it. So yeah.
Fair enough. Talk to me a little bit about just taking a step back from Kamala Harris for a moment, and even the party itself. Help me think about the state of third-party politics. And what I mean by that is most people in America, not most people, most people that I talk to in America at least, have dismissed third parties altogether as a legitimate, viable possibility. I can convince people maybe to vote Green for city council, maybe to vote Green for alderman in a city. I struggle to get people to even talk through the mayoralty in a serious way. And that's part of, there's all kinds of corporate Democrat, corporate Republican political structures that block us, and media structures that make it hard to do. And then you talked about the kind of political reality of siphoning votes from the next closest ideological party. But the problem is, at the national level, if we don't get that 5%, we don't get the federal funds to compete with those people. So we got to get some more votes to be competitive. But if we get just enough to be competitive, then everybody else loses in terms, because now you got Trump back in the office or whoever, right? So people see those dimensions of it and they go, look, I get it, but all I know is I'd rather have Kamala than Donald. And so I can't think about third party, because all y'all do is mess up elections. All I've known my whole life is that whether it's Nader, whether it's Perot, whether it's Stein, whether it's Cornell, y'all just keep messing stuff up. So that seems to be the state of the perception of third party politics. But talk to me about, one, how you think about the perception, and also what the reality is of where we are.
Sure. Well, look, I love listening to our people. The people are wise, right? And so when the people are bringing up those objections, and I hear them often, we should listen, right? What the people want is a strategy, and the people don't want to waste their time. They don't want to waste their money. They don't want to waste their vote, and they deserve a strategy. And I believe, like, ultimately, if you're any party, the Democrats, the Republican Party, or any third party, you need to articulate your strategy. And this is true with the Democratic Party. We endorsed VP Harris, and I understand that people are on a wave of Black girl magic, and like, I'm not in any way challenging that wave and that energy. And I think it's important for people who are aligning around VP Harris as like the tip of the spear of the broad pro-democracy coalition, that they ask some questions about strategy and policy. And I think they should ask those questions about me and the Working Families Party. And so this is what I tell folks who are questioning the third party. All third parties are not made the same, that you could judge a third party by its strategy, and that parties, one way of defining a party is parties organize winning, right? So if all your party does is offer a losing strategy, then to me, you're not doing one of the fundamental jobs of parties, which is organizing winning. And we have to organize winning in a terrain that we did not design, in a terrain that is not ideal, in a terrain where organized capital has some of the best hands all the time, and we always get a really, really troubling hand. Those are the conditions. And the thing that I know is that over generations, I know this for Black folks, I know this for working folks, over generations, we've been dealt really hard hands, and we've figured out a way. And so for the Working Families Party, what we explain, number one, is that we're non-delusional about those realities. It's not going to happen overnight. However, it can absolutely happen with a plan. What the people are asking for is a plan, and we deserve to give it to them. What we show is proof points. We show what is happening in Philly, the transformation that's taking place with Kendra Brooks, the minority leader, with Nicholas O'Rourke, the minority whip. We talk about the fact that we recruited Tish James, who was able to take on Donald Trump. we recruited her as an independent Working Families Party city council member, and she ran against the Democrat in the general election and won. She won as an independent Working Families city council member, which means we're more than happy to run against the Democrat in the general election when we see a path to victory. We have to articulate what the path to victory is. And if we can't, then the people don't deserve our vote. That's for every party, including every third party. So we're not simply talking in bromides, and we're not simply talking in high language. We can use all those things, but we have to bring it back down to strategy and to the path to victory. And for us, we want fusion voting to be the law of the land in every single state. And again, back to fusion voting, it just means that your party could cross-endorse the candidate of other parties. So last time, 2020, when we endorsed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the voters of New York had a choice. They could vote for them on the Democratic Party ticket or the Working Families Party ticket. Now, you might say, like, well, why does that really matter if, like, I'm still just voting for these people? To us, that's a building block, right? 400,000 people voted in New York on the Working Families Party line. We were able to use that as real leverage, real concrete leverage, and I'm guaranteeing you that leverage really mattered on the local level, on the state level, when we're negotiating on real policy, and also on the federal level. I'm able to represent those 400,000 voters, and we are not getting lost in the Democratic Party sauce, right? And as that builds, we're building our power so we could, to the voter, know how much votes our coalition has so that we could pull the trigger. One of the things about voting is a tactic, right? But it has to be part of a bigger strategy. And one of the things about tactics is every tactic has its time. There will be a time for a independent left candidate to run and win for president in the United States. And I believe that the infrastructure that we're building will create the conditions for that time. But it's not always clear when that time is. And
well, if it ain't time, if it isn't quite time yet, then what do you make of the presidential runs of Jill Stein or Cornel West? Do you think, and I'm not trying to start no mess. And again, I'm a Green Party member, so I have these conversations all the time. Do you think that they're counterproductive?
This is what I'll say. I think our endorsement speaks for itself. We believe that it is critically important for the billions of people on this planet, for the millions of people in this country, for the working class Black and brown people in North Philly and other places, for us to say with our full chest what we believe is true, that if you're in one of the number of swing states where this election will come down to, that this is a binary choice. This is not a choice between many candidates. This presidential election, for better or worse, is truly a choice between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And in that binary choice, that your vote actually matters. It's the difference between a Project 2025 white Christian nationalist agenda, and that's not cap. Like, they wrote it down and they have the plans to operationalize it, or not Shangri-La, or not a totally transformative democracy and economy, but the ability to organize, right? When I talked about that 10-year arc for us, we believe that under Trump, MAGA, and Project 2025, that will be extended maybe 2 or 3 decades or 4 decades, right? And so we actually believe that for trans children and families that have trans children in Alabama, for everyday workers, when you look at the workers' rights agenda, for everyday people that, Trump and MAGA are talking about basically nationalizing stop and frisk. For Black people and Black men everywhere, these distinctions actually matter in our material lives. And we have no illusions about what the Democratic Party is and what is in store for us after the election. Let's just say VP Harris wins. Well, then we have our act cut out for us. We truly have our act cut out for us, because I want people to remember the Obama years, the hope and change, and that beautiful lyrical electoral movement that basically in some ways allowed Obama to be a shiny hope and change sort of
with no accountability to an electorate. So talk to me about that. How do we move from symbolism and even pragmatic victories, right? Like, look,
Yep.
Obama over McCain, Obama over Romney, Harris over Trump are all pragmatic choices and tangible victories in a way.
Yep.
But how do we now enter a space of accountability if ultimately we know that we ain't got no other option in the immediate, in the short term? How do we get Kamala Harris to listen to us on Gaza or reparations or defunding police or any of these other issues?
So number one, we don't put our trust in the Democratic Party. We don't put our trust in any politician. That includes Kamala Harris all the way down. We have to put our trust in our strategy and our organizing, right? And so what I remember 2008, I remember 2012, I saw Obama, this organizer, this person who actually was in progressive spaces and in left spaces, ascend to the White House, but then bring Timothy Geithner and bring a lot of these hardcore neoliberal sort of economists into the White House in order to develop a truly corporate economic agenda. I saw that, and I saw how that happened, right? I saw how that happened, right? And one of the ways it happened is that they attempted to defang the movement. They built this movement, and then they said, yo, give this brother some space. Let him work. Let him cook, right? And we need to learn from that. If you trust Black women, if Kamala Harris wins, then you should trust that Black woman to be able to engage principally with accountability, with organizing, and we should be building a movement and hope that she aligns with that movement for justice, right? And if she doesn't, then it's our job to hold her accountable. That is actually the relationship. That is what democracy is. Democracy isn't voting one day and then dropping off a politician like you're dropping off a child at daycare and letting them have at it. Democracy is about a very robust civil society engaging every single day.
I agree, but the problem is people let Obama cook to the very last day. You're going. The moment of accountability is there when it's Trump. People love when I'm critiquing Trump. If I say anything right now, if Kamala Harris right now said, I support sending missiles to Gaza, and blowing the whole place up, God forbid. And I said, you know what? That's wrong. Half of my timeline or half of the letters I get would be, yeah, it's probably not right, but wait till after the election.
Listen. This is something that this is a contradiction that we can no longer hold, right? There will be people who will say, let that sister cook. Like, why now that a Black woman is at the White House, not why are you good? It is our duty. It is our duty. And so I want the smoke. Like the day after election day, look, brother, look, we could share. I'll go in your timeline and we'll go back and forth because it will be, to me, the greatest betrayal of our people if we join this united front to defeat fascism. And I believe it's our historical duty to do that. And then at the other end of the election, we don't build anything and we don't hold accountable any elected officials, including the folks that we brought there. That is actually a proper relationship for independent political actors and the folks that they brought to the White House or to any office. And like, if we abrogate our responsibility and then we get the neoliberal agenda, then we've got what we organized for. And so I want things to be different. And I believe in transformation. I believe that we could actually do something different. We could change our shape. We could not be the folks that put all of our energy into an election and then after election day go home. And that we could have those arguments, those fights, and those debates with people who would ask us to let her cook or to like hands off a Black. Look, when it comes to the slander, when it comes to the misogyny, when it comes to the racism, I'm not having it. I will be unrelenting in pushing back against all of the hate against Kamala Harris. That's just on the culture. That's just on GP.
But that's the frustrating part, Mo. Like I have literally. I said this to my wife, I think earlier. I was like, the reason I hate these MAGA people so much, and these racist, patriarchal, misogynist across the board people, is that I spend so much time defending Kamala Harris from all the bullshit that I don't even have space to actually point out the fact that she's a neoliberal imperialist cop. Like, I don't even got time to say that because I'm like, you're not going to talk about her being childless, which she's not. But we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to address her, contest her blackness. We're not going to call her a DEI hire. We're not going to hold her to a higher or lower standard. We're not going to do any of that. But so much of the energy is there.
Right. And then, there's no bandwidth for it. By the way, let's critique her public record, and let's actually have a serious conversation about policy. Yeah, and look, I hear you. We have to. The thing that our job, I believe, as principled, clear-eyed, serious people on the left, we have a very complicated and challenging job, right? Because we have to both articulate, because I think the language of pragmatism, somehow people believe that pragmatism cannot be radical. I believe that the most radical things are the most pragmatic things. I actually think they go hand in hand.
For sure.
So we have to be more pragmatic. We have to be more principled. We have to be more willing to sacrifice. We have to be willing to call balls and strikes. So when Joe Biden does, and his administration does things that we want, we at the Working Families Party are the first to be like, yeah, we agree with that. You should see our comments. They're like, how dare you? How could you possibly? It's like, well, that's a policy that we actually support. Like we don't support these policies, and we're gonna. And so we have this almost impossible job, and it is the cross that we bear on the left, being principled, being thoughtful, being strategic, and being pragmatic. And I'm happy to bear that cross, because I believe that the only way to democracy in this country or anywhere is by building a movement, a working class forward movement, not just the activist class, not just like people who self-identify as being leftist or self-identify as being progressive, but people like my mom, who's a retired 1199 nurse. That when I think about the Working Families Party, that's whose energy I'm focused on. Or my cousin who had multiple service industry jobs and is a single mom. Those are the people that I think about. And to me, for them, it's our job to make sure that our movement is irresistible, curious, compassionate, open, humble, pragmatic, and have the ability to do multiple things. Have the ability to say, yes, we are, with our full chest, we're endorsing Kamala Harris, right? Because we understand this binary choice, and we're not going to sit down and we're not going to opine while MAGA actually takes over the federal government and advances the entire world into authoritarianism. And also, we're going to have a sturdy critique of the war in Gaza, right? Like, so for example, I was on the white dudes for Kamala call, and then the next day or the day after, I was with my comrades, my Palestinian comrades, with Not Another Bomb campaign. Like, you can do both. You could do 3 things. You could do 4 things. Like, are there tensions? Absolutely. But can we resolve and hold those contradictions? We must.
We absolutely must.
We must.
I gotta say, you have made probably the most compelling and thoughtful and pragmatic, principled and sincere case for third-party policies that I've heard in a long time. I appreciate you, my brother. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight on Night School. Thank you for breaking this down. Thank you for taking the stances that you have and advocating for working families and really everybody who's vulnerable in this world. My brother, hopefully we'll see you at the victory celebration.
Absolutely, brother. Have me here anytime. It was great.
Oh, you coming back for sure.
All right.
All right. Everybody, that was Maurice Mitchell, National Director of the Working Families Party. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you spread the word and share it, and we'll definitely have him back because he is brilliant and cool. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching Night School tonight. It was an absolute pleasure hanging out with y'all. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. When you hit the like button, you increase our influence with the algorithm. We can show corporate media that we matter too. That subscribe button, of course, increases our social media footprint, which allows us to get the content out more. And if you're so inclined, hit the join button. Go to the description and see it. If you're on your phone, if you're on the desktop, just click that join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. With your monthly subscription, you allow us to have the financial stability to produce the content that we produce, from the what do we do here? We do so much stuff, from Night School Monday to Friday, from office hours on Sunday, to the Classroom in the Cell podcast with Mumia Abu Jamal, to Coffee and Books podcast. All of it happens because of your economic support. There's no billionaire backing us. There's no corporate media underwriting us. We do this with the power of the people. So we ask that you become a monthly subscriber to the channel. But if you cannot make a monthly commitment, I ask you to go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and make a one-time payment. I ask that you make it, we call it a tuition payment for the month. Just drop in whatever you can. If you leave us $1, we're grateful. If you give us $1 million, we'll be grateful. Maybe even a little more grateful. But anything in between is fine. But we ask that if you could just make a $10 donation for the month. If everybody watching right now were to make a $10 donation for the month, we'd be able to meet all of our financial goals. We'd be able to pay our staff. We'd be able to invest in content. We'd be able to build that studio. We'd be able to do all the work that we do with the power of the people. So I ask that you do what you can. And either way, we're going to be here. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you share. And most important, make sure that you study, because that's what night school is all about.